The golden morning light streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating Mabel Harrison's hands as she carefully arranged blueberry pancakes on a plate. She glanced at the clock. 7:15. Soon her husband Greg would finish getting ready for work and come hurrying down the stairs as usual. "Mom, can I have more syrup?" 10-year-old Ethan, sitting at the dining table, pointed to his half-eaten pancakes. His bright blue eyes resembled his mother's, but his straight nose and facial features were unmistakably inherited from his father. "Of course, but eat quickly." "You'll be late for school," Mabel answered with a warm smile. She heard footsteps coming down the stairs, and Greg Harrison appeared, dressed in a navy suit, already with his mobile phone to his ear. Thanks to his long-standing jogging habit, he maintained a youthful physique. Mabel was proud that her husband always looked neat and composed in any situation. "Yes, I'll make the 10 o'clock meeting." "The materials are already prepared," Greg said on the phone while hurriedly pouring coffee into a mug. After ending the call, he gently patted his son's head. "Hey, champion. You had that math test today, right?" Ethan nodded. "Yes. But I'll be fine. Mom helped me practice yesterday until I understood everything." "That's great," Greg mouthed "thank you" to Mabel and kissed her cheek. "I might be late again today. I need to review the Williams family's investment plan." Mabel said while lightly adjusting her husband's tie, "That's okay. Don't worry about us, just focus on your work." Greg Harrison had earned a reputation as a senior advisor at Southwest Investment Group for steadily growing his clients' assets. Thanks to his success, the Harrison family owned a beautiful home in a quiet Phoenix suburb and lived without financial worries. After Greg left, Mabel saw her son off to school and began preparing for her part-time job at the flower shop, Blooming Wonders. She loved talking to flowers. Helping customers select the right flowers for important moments in their lives meant more to her than just a job. Before leaving the house, Mabel gazed at a family photo in the living room. It was a picture of the three of them at the Grand Canyon, all with beaming smiles. That was last summer. Recently, Greg's business trips had increased, reducing the time he spent with family. Still, he made an effort to attend his son's baseball games whenever possible and valued their tradition of watching movies together on weekends. "We may not be perfect, but we're a happy family," Mabel smiled at the photo. That afternoon, when Mabel returned home after finishing her shift at the flower shop, her phone rang. It was Greg. "Mabel, listen. I have a surprise." His voice was filled with excitement. "What? Another business trip?" Mabel asked jokingly. "No, it's good news. I restructured the Williams family's portfolio. They gave me a big bonus." "Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations, dear." "So I finally decided. I bought that car. The Lexus SUV you were admiring." Mabel gasped. She had indeed complimented the model they saw in the showroom, but hadn't expected him to actually purchase it. "Greg, that's a really expensive car." "We don't." "You deserve it, Mabel," Greg interrupted her. "You're always doing so much for our family. We can splurge a little sometimes." Mabel felt mixed emotions. She was happy about her husband's success and generosity, but also felt a little uneasy about such a major purchase made without prior consultation. Still, she said, "Thank you. I'm really happy. It'll be delivered directly from the dealership tomorrow afternoon. I'll try to come home early so I can see you and Ethan's faces when it arrives." After hanging up, Mabel sank into the sofa. While grateful for Greg's generosity, she couldn't help but think about the changes in his behavior lately. He was spending more time at work and away from home. Yet, his hard-working nature and prioritization of family seemed unchanged. The next day, when Ethan returned from school, Mabel told her son about the new car. "Dad has prepared a surprise for us." "What kind?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "A new car. It's being delivered this afternoon. Dad said he'll come home early. At 4 o'clock, a pearly white Lexus SUV pulled up in front of the Harrison home. Mabel and Ethan stood on the porch watching its arrival. She felt proud of her husband's success and saw this gift as a symbol of their bright future. "Wow, Mom! Our new car." Ethan bounced around excitedly. "Yes, a present from Dad," Mabel smiled. A week passed. Mabel was gradually getting used to driving the Lexus, but she began feeling increasingly uncomfortable with Greg's behavior. That night too, Greg didn't return until late. When the clock struck 11, they finally heard the front door open. Mabel had been dozing on the living room sofa waiting for her husband's return. "You're still up?" Greg said, looking a bit surprised. His shirt carried a faint scent of perfume, a fragrance Mabel had never used. "I was waiting for you. Are you okay? You've been really late recently." Greg placed his briefcase on the floor and loosened his tie as he replied, "I've got a big project. I'm putting together an investment plan for opening a new branch on the West Coast." "Is that all?" Mabel looked into her husband's eyes. "Of course. What else would there be?" he retorted, seeming somewhat irritated. "I'm just busy with work. You know how demanding this job can be." Mabel exhaled deep.
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
"I know. I was just worried. Lately, it feels like you've gone somewhere far away." "I'm tired. I'm going to take a shower and go to bed," Greg interrupted her and went upstairs. Mabel remained alone in the living room, staring at the cup in her hands. The tea had already gone cold. That weekend, Ethan had baseball practice. Greg unusually made time to take his son to practice. Mabel decided to clean the house during that time. While organizing the bedroom closet, she found an unfamiliar receipt in one of Greg's suit pockets. It was from a bar at a downtown hotel. The date was last Tuesday, when Greg had said he would be late due to a late meeting with clients. Mabel felt a complex mix of emotions squeezing her chest as she held the receipt. She took a deep breath to calm herself. It must have really been a meeting with clients. "Don't overthink it," she told herself. That night, Ethan knocked on his mother's bedroom door. The clock showed midnight. "What is it, Ethan?" Mabel asked in a sleepy voice. "Dad's doing something weird," Ethan said in a low voice. Mabel sat up immediately. "What do you mean?" "I was thirsty and went to get water. Then I heard Dad on the phone in the garage. He was talking really quietly. When I got closer, he suddenly hung up." Mabel's heart began to race. "Dad's handling a big project. He gets calls at all hours. Don't worry. But Dad got really angry when he noticed me. He said, 'What are you doing?' I was scared." Mabel hugged Ethan. "It's okay. I'll talk to Dad tomorrow." The next morning, Greg had left the house earlier than usual. When Mabel woke up, she found a handwritten note on his pillow. "Have an early morning meeting. We'll be home for dinner. Love you." That day, while working at the flower shop, Mabel's mind was elsewhere. As she prepared a wedding bouquet for a customer, she thought about her own marriage. She had met Greg in college and married right after graduation. He was her first serious boyfriend, and Mabel was attracted to his sincerity and decisiveness. During their 12 years of marriage, they had overcome many challenges. When Ethan was born and Greg was building his career, she had put her own dreams aside to support the family. That had been their implicit understanding, but now it seemed to be wavering. At dinner time, Greg was more quiet than usual. Even when Ethan talked about interesting events at school, he seemed distracted. After dinner, Greg said to Mabel, "I need to talk to you." When they were alone in the living room, Greg began with a serious expression, I need to go to Los Angeles for a week. It's for preparing the new branch. A week? Mabel was surprised. Ethan has his recital. You promised you'd be there. I know. I'm really sorry. But this is unavoidable. The company's future depends on it. Mabel silently looked out the window. The darkness of night was beginning to cover their garden. Mabel, Greg took her hand. Once this is over, I'll be able to spend more time with the family. I promise. There seemed to be no lie in his eyes. At least Mabel wanted to believe that. When do you leave? First thing tomorrow morning, Greg answered. By the way, how's the new car? I'm still trying to get used to it. It's big and hard to drive. Then keep this, Greg handed her the new car keys. Use it whenever you need to while I'm away. Mabel took the keys and was enveloped in a strange sensation. It felt as if Greg was entrusting her with something important. The next morning, Greg left early. Mabel and Ethan saw him off at the front door. Greg hugged Ethan longer than usual and kissed Mabel's cheek. See you in a week. I'll call every day. From that day on, Greg did indeed call every day. However, his messages and calls seemed oddly formal, lacking the warmth they once had. When Mabel asked, "How are things?" he would end the conversation with just, "busy." He didn't show any interest in talking to Ethan either. On the fourth day of his business trip, a message arrived from Greg. Coming back the day after tomorrow. How's the new car? Mabel was a bit surprised. Greg seemed to be particularly concerned about the new car. I haven't driven it yet. I can walk to nearby shops, and the old car is fine for taking Ethan to and from school, she replied. That night, Mabel found Ethan in his room, looking anxious while hugging his stuffed animal. What's wrong, honey? I'm scared about Dad coming back, Ethan said quietly. Why? Mabel sat next to her son. Dad's scary lately. He always seems angry and doesn't talk to us much. Your father just has work stress. When he comes back, we'll all spend some good time together, Mabel hugged her son, but she felt anxious herself. The day before Greg's return, the Arizona morning began with unusual heat. Mabel looked out the kitchen window at the thirsty plants in the garden and thought she should water them. Opening the refrigerator, she noticed they were out of milk, and the vegetable drawer was empty too. They needed to go to the supermarket. Ethan, we're going shopping. Do you want anything? She called up to her son on the second floor. Chocolate chip cookies, came the reply. Mabel smiled. Ethan had been quieter and more pensive during his father's absence, but at least his passion for his favorite snack remained intact. All right, get ready. We'll leave in 10 minutes. Normally she would take the old car, but today the heat was intense. The new Lexus with its better air conditioning would be more comfortable than the old sedan with its deteriorating AC. Mabel picked up the keys Greg had left on the counter. Ethan, we're taking the new car today, Mabel said as she watched her son come down the stairs. A flash of concern crossed Ethan's face. Mom, the old car is fine. But it's hot out. The new car has better air conditioning, and we need space for groceries. They headed to the garage. As Mabel opened the door with the key in hand, the brand new Lexus SUV sat quietly. Its white paint gleamed in the lighting. As Mabel approached the car, Ethan suddenly stopped. His face had turned pale. Ethan. What's wrong? Her son stared at the car and said in a small voice, Mom, we shouldn't ride in this car. Mabel placed her hand on her son's shoulder. Why? Did something happen? Ethan paused as if choosing his words, then silently pointed to the trunk. The trunk? Is there something there? Mabel's heart began to race. Dad. Ethan struggled to get the words out. Dad came to the car several times after he got back, in the middle of the night. I saw him from the window when I got up to go to the bathroom. Dad was putting something in the trunk. Mabel tried to understand her son's words. What was he putting in? Could you see? Ethan shook his head. I couldn't see. But Dad was being very careful. Like he didn't want anyone to see him. Mabel clutched the keys tightly. When did you see this? The night before Dad left. And then again on the morning he departed. In her mind, the small incidents that had been bothering her started to connect. The late-night phone calls, the sudden business trip, the curt messages. And his unusual concern about the new car. Mabel took a deep breath and turned to her son. Ethan, go back to the house. I'll check it out. Are you going alone? Ethan's voice trembled. It's okay. I'll be right back. Ethan reluctantly obeyed and went back to the house. However, at the door, he turned around and said, I'm coming too. I don't want to leave Mom alone. Mabel hesitated for a moment, but seeing her son's determined expression, she nodded. The two approached the car, and Mabel nervously inserted the key into the trunk. As she slowly opened it, at first glance, there was nothing unusual. Just a spare tire and emergency kit neatly arranged. Looks like there's nothing, Mabel said with relief. No, Ethan pointed inside. There. Under the carpet, it's a little raised. Looking closely, Mabel noticed that a part of the carpet on the trunk floor was indeed slightly and unnaturally elevated. She reached out and lifted the edge of the carpet. There was a hidden compartment. What had appeared to be a flat floor was actually a storage space that could be opened and closed. Mabel's hands trembled. Open it, Ethan urged in a small voice. Mabel pulled the handle of the compartment and lifted the lid. Inside were a large brown envelope and a black pouch. Opening the envelope, she found a stack of documents. On top was a passport application for someone named Stephen Collins. The attached photo was of Greg. Underneath were several documents, statements from an Argentine bank account, brochures from a South American real estate company, and a photograph of a woman with a little girl. Around the woman's neck was a necklace with the same design as the one Greg had bought for Mabel's birthday. Mom, who's this? Ethan pointed to the photo. Mabel was speechless. She felt her mind going blank. The woman in the photo was a stranger, but the little girl's features somewhat resembled Ethan's. Next, she opened the black pouch and found bundles of cash inside. All $100 bills, and it looked like a substantial amount. A small note was tucked at the bottom of the pouch. It read, Buenos Aires, May 15, 21:30 departure. Tomorrow's flight. Mabel felt on the verge of panic from confusion and fear. The Greg she knew, her husband of 12 years, had been living another life she knew nothing about. He was leading a double life and now preparing to leave the country. And probably never intended to return. Mom? Ethan's voice brought her back to reality. Shouldn't you call Dad? Mabel nodded and with trembling hands, took out her mobile phone. When she dialed Greg's number, all she got was a message saying, this number is no longer in service. He had already cancelled his phone number. It's not connecting, Mabel said, feeling desperate. Ethan silently took his mother's hand. Should we call the police? Mabel took a deep breath and tried to organize her thoughts. Panicking wouldn't solve anything. First, we need to examine these documents carefully. And I need to gather more information myself. She returned all the documents and cash to their original place and closed the trunk. Forgetting about their shopping plans, they went back to the house. Sitting at the kitchen table, Mabel called her friend Judith. Judith had been Mabel's college friend and now worked as a lawyer. Judith, can you come over right away? It's an emergency, Mabel said, keeping her voice steady. What happened? Judith's voice was filled with concern. It's about Greg. It's difficult to explain, but he's he's trying to abandon us. I found evidence. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Judith replied immediately. After hanging up, Mabel knelt in front of Ethan and took his hands. Ethan, you are a very brave and smart boy. If you hadn't noticed, we might have lost everything by tomorrow. Is Dad really not coming back? Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. Mabel hugged her son. I don't know. But whatever happens, we'll stay together. I promise. She buried her face in her son's head, fighting back tears. The thought of the difficulties awaiting them made her heart tighten. But one thing was certain, she was prepared to make any sacrifice to protect her son. Judith Myers arrived as promised 30 minutes later. When the doorbell rang, Mabel flew to the entrance. Opening the door, she found Judith in a suit with a serious expression. She was carrying a suitcase, apparently prepared to stay overnight. Before I hear what happened, let me tell you this. I'm on your side, Mabel, Judith embraced her friend. Whatever has happened, we'll solve it together. The two moved to the living room. Ethan was already resting in his room. Mabel explained to Judith the contents of the documents found in the car's trunk. First, we need to confirm if this Stephen Collins is really Greg, Judith said practically. Show me the passport application and photo. Mabel spread out the stack of documents she had brought from the Lexus. The photo on the passport application was undoubtedly Greg. The birth date differed from his, but the photo was clearly him. Do you know who this woman is? Judith pointed to the family photo. Mabel shook her head. I've never seen her. But I recognize the necklace. It's the same design as the one Greg bought me for my birthday. What's her name? Mabel examined the documents. Rachel Lang. The little girl's name is Sophia Lang. It says she's 5 years old. Judith took notes and then looked up. Let me see that necklace up close. As Mabel handed over the photo of the necklace, Judith used her smartphone's light to examine it closely. There's an engraving here. Initials, RL. RL. Rachel Lang, Mabel whispered. Let's first contact Greg's company, Judith suggested. It's Saturday so no one might be there, but we can check if he's really on a business trip. Mabel found the emergency contact for Southwest Investment Group. A weekend receptionist answered the phone. Hello, I'd like to get in touch with Greg Harrison, Mabel said in a calm voice. I'm sorry, but Mr. Harrison no longer works with our company. The receptionist's response nearly stopped Mabel's heart. What do you mean? He should be on a business trip. Mr. Harrison resigned 2 weeks ago. He cited personal reasons. Mabel hung up and collapsed onto the sofa with trembling hands. Greg had already quit his job. 2 weeks ago. Judith silently took her friend's hand. We need to check the bank accounts. Mabel logged into online banking. Looking at her and Greg's joint account, there was only a minimal balance. The savings account was the same. It's almost empty, Mabel said, dumbfounded. Last month there was still a considerable amount. Transaction history. Mabel scrolled through past transactions. There have been several large withdrawals in the last 2 weeks. The last withdrawal was 3 days ago. A very large amount. Judith opened her laptop and began researching something. Mabel, Argentina has loopholes in extradition treaties. Many people use it to hide assets or escape legal problems. So that's it. Mabel sighed deeply. Greg was planning to abandon us and run away with the money. With that woman and child, Judith quietly added. Mabel suddenly stood up as if realizing something. Wait. The girl is 5 years old. But Greg and I have been married for 12 years. That means. He's been living a double life since after your marriage, Judith said, choosing her words carefully. The two fell silent for a while. In Mabel's mind, Memories of her time with Greg flashed by like a slideshow. His late returns home, frequent business trips, curt attitude on the phone. Everything made sense now. "Let's search for the name Rachel Lang," Judith typed on her laptop. A few minutes later, she rotated the screen to show Mabel. Found her. Rachel Lang, former marketing director at Southwest Investment Group. She resigned 6 months ago. The profile picture on the screen showed the same woman from the photo found in the car trunk. A beautiful blonde woman with a confident smile. "She worked at the same company," Mabel murmured. "I wonder how long they've been involved." "What's more important is that Greg is trying to leave the country tomorrow," Judith returned to practicalities. "You found the note that said, Buenos Aires, May 15, 21:30 departure, right?" Mabel nodded. "We don't have much time. We need to act now." Judith closed her laptop. "He had a passport application. That means he probably doesn't have the new passport yet. He might be trying to leave the country with his regular American passport. Should we contact the police?" Mabel said hesitantly. "Yes, but that might not be enough. He may not have legally committed a crime. But there's a high possibility of asset hiding and fraudulent acts," Judith pondered. "A partner at my law firm specializes in international fraud cases. I'll contact him." While Judith was on the phone, Mabel quietly gazed at family photos. The wedding photo with Greg hanging on the wall. The three of them smiling at Ethan's birthday party. Had it all been a lie? "Mabel, listen," Judith returned after finishing her call. "My partner will contact a special investigator for financial crimes. They might be able to prevent him from leaving the country. But we need more evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "Anything that proves he's hiding assets. House deeds, investment records, tax returns, whatever you can find. He had a study, right? Let's check there." The two headed to Greg's study. Mabel had never invaded her husband's private space before. But now, she had no choice. Opening the desk drawers, most were empty. No documents, and the computer was gone too. He erased his traces. Mabel was disappointed. "Wait," Judith pointed to an old safe on top of the bookshelf. "Can you open that?" Mabel shook her head. "I don't know the combination. Let's think of numbers Greg might use." "His birthday." Mabel tried, but it didn't open. Ethan's birthday and their wedding anniversary didn't work either. "Think about his relationship with Rachel," Judith suggested. "When might he have met her?" Mabel tried to remember. Greg started working with the marketing department 7 years ago. It might have been around that time. What year was 7 years ago? 2018. Mabel entered the number. The safe didn't open. "Her daughter is 5 years old, right?" Judith pondered. "What year was the child born?" Mabel entered 2020. With a click, the safe opened. Inside was another envelope. Opening it, they found multiple real estate deeds and offshore account statements. They weren't in Greg's name, but in the name, Stephen Collins. Additionally, there was a life insurance policy Mabel had never seen before. The beneficiaries were Rachel Lang and Sophia Lang. "Now we have enough evidence," Judith said, gathering the documents. "Fraud and asset hiding. He will be arrested. What will happen to us?" Mabel asked in a small voice. "Ethan and me." Judith firmly gripped her friend's hand. "You'll be fine. These assets will be seized by the court and eventually returned to you and Ethan. And most importantly, you'll be free. Free from a life built on lies." Mabel looked out the window. The night was late, but in the eastern sky, a faint brightness was beginning to appear. The start of a new day. And the beginning of a new life for her and Ethan. The hallway of the suburban Phoenix courthouse was overly air-conditioned. Mabel readjusted the light cardigan around her shoulders and sat on a wooden bench. She was waiting for the final hearing to end. 3 months ago, Greg, aka Stephen Collins, was detained at the airport just before boarding a flight to Argentina. Rachel Lang was with him. The courthouse doors opened, and Judith emerged with documents in hand. Seeing her expression, Mabel understood everything. "It's over," Judith said quietly. "Greg received a 10-year prison sentence. All assets will be returned to you and Ethan." Mabel exhaled deeply. "What about Rachel?" "She also received a 3-year sentence as an accomplice. Her daughter Sophia was taken in by her grandmother." What became clear during the trial was that Rachel had also fully participated in Greg's plan. She had helped hide his assets and even laundered money through multiple bank accounts. And she too had been betrayed. She believed Stephen Collins was a single investor. Mabel and Rachel shared a strange commonality. They had both been deceived by the same man. "What will you do now?" Judith asked. Mabel smiled. "First, we'll move. There are too many memories in that house." She remembered the day she last faced Greg in court. Although he looked exhausted, the words he said while looking straight into her eyes were unforgettable. "You two were the mistake of my life. Rachel and her daughter are my real family." Those words had deeply hurt her, but they also liberated her. She no longer needed to live with his lies. 1 year later, Mabel and Ethan were having breakfast in their new home. From the window, they could see Sedona's Red Rock Mountains. They had left Phoenix and were starting a new life in a new place. "There's career day at school today," Ethan said, stirring his cereal. "Everyone's going to talk about their parents' jobs. You'll talk about the shop." Mabel smiled. She had used part of the funds returned from the trial to open a small flower shop. The name, Blooming Second Chances, embodied her hope for a new life. "Yes. I'm taking pictures of the shop to show everyone." Mabel gently kissed her son's cheek. "That's lovely. I'm sure everyone will be impressed." Ethan silently stirred his cereal for a while, then suddenly looked up. "Mom, promise you won't marry someone like Dad." Mabel was surprised, but quickly sat next to her son and took his hand. "I promise, Ethan. A real family doesn't betray each other. We'll always live honestly." "Yes," Ethan smiled with relief. They held hands in the morning light, watching the beginning of a new day. The past had shaped them, but the future was theirs to create. Wounds might remain, but they would continue moving forward. Mabel squeezed her son's hand tightly. Their real journey was just beginning.